Welcome to the Building Limes Forum Conference at Exeter Cathedral. My name is Nick Durnan. I'm a mason, carver and conservator and have been involved with various aspects of stonework repair and conservation at the cathedral since the mid-1980s. I have been mainly involved with conservation work to the image screen on the west front and surveying the ongoing condition of the interior monuments. For the last 5 years, I've been a member of the Cathedral Fabric Advisory Committee. The history and geology of the cathedral and the west front is very well documented, much of this due to the work of the current cathedral archaeologist John Allen. Also, early photographs show useful information about repair history, and for example, this early image of the west front from over 100 years ago shows recent restoration work at the time to the southern blind arcade, where decayed beer stone was replaced with dolting stone. When you look at the image on the left of the west front, it can be difficult to identify what is original and what is later replacement stonework, and also difficult to identify the many different stone types. The stone-by-stone record drawing, which John Allen compiles, reveal the surviving original medieval stone, later repairs, and the geology of the west front. For example, the orange-coloured ashlar is medieval Salcombe Regis stone, and the pale yellow is medieval beer stone. The blues, purples and reds identify 19th and 20th century restoration. Much of the 19th and 20th century restoration has been to decaying masonry, but 2 new statues have also been inserted. These 2 statues, both designed and carved by Simon Verity, who went on to carve a series of polychrome figures on the Portal of Paradise at the Cathedral Church of St. John the Divine in New York. When it comes to making decisions about current repair and conservation interventions, past records and photographs are very useful. For example, in 2008, the repair of the surviving medieval southern blind arcade was necessary due to its poor condition. Historical photographs enabled some idea of rates of decay over the past 100 years to be determined. After considering options to replace or conserve the eroded stonework, it was decided to use lime mortar to partially rebuild the lost forms of architectural detail. Inserting new stones alongside very worn stone can be visually disturbing, and this is one of the few areas of original medieval surviving moulded stonework on the west front. You can see on this image of the northern blind arcade how it has been restored using dolting and Ketton stone from around the late 19th and early 20th centuries. A few isolated medieval stones, still with traces of medieval polychrome, were also preserved during the Ketton stone replacement campaign. The intention of the 2008 mortar repair work was not to reinstate the full profile of the lost architectural forms, but to clarify the overall reading of the architectural design through a partial build-up using mortar. Singleton Birch NHL2 was chosen for this high-level exposed work, the mortar being built up in layers using ceramic armatures as support. The aggregate used was graded Portland limestone. The architectural forms were repaired and shaped in mortar in a way as to imitate sound, eroded stone surfaces. Upon completion, the overall effect is of an area of worn, ancient but sound architectural stone detail, where the original design can be clearly seen within the context of the whole west Front. This slide shows the repaired area with the adjacent West Front stonework. Repairs and shelter coating work were also carried out at this time to other areas of the West Front. The west window and adjacent ashlar and architectural detail were shelter coated to protect vulnerable surfaces and visually blend the different restoration stone types. Moving on to one of the glories of Exeter Cathedral and the West Front, this is the image screen dating from the 14th and 15th centuries, carved in the fine-grained Cretaceous Beer limestone. A conservation programme directed by Robert and Eve Baker under the auspices of a specialist advisory committee was started in 1978 and completed in 1985. I was involved after the Bakers had left, and I was involved for the last 2 years of the programme in 1984 to 85. As at the West Front of Wells Cathedral, the conservation programme at Exeter was seen as an intervention which would require future regular inspection and maintenance. To date, there have been 5 subsequent inspections and retreatment programmes. The original conservation and repair programme in the 1970s and early 80s was carried out from a fixed scaffold. Subsequently, inspections and retreatment works have been carried out using hydraulic platforms and movable tower scaffolds. This drawing by John Allen, the cathedral archaeologist, shows the phases of work, especially showing the extent of the medieval work, but also the dates of later restorations. And you can see how the majority of the medieval work survives, the majority of the medieval statues survives. This geology drawing, also by John Allen, shows the different types of stonework. You have the yellow colour of the medieval beer stone and the later restoration works in purple and grey and blue. Again, historic photographs and archaeological record drawings are immensely useful in revealing repair history, rates of decay and stone types. This early photograph reveals the beer stone original canopies above the figure sculpture, which, as the drawing on the right shows, were replaced with Ketton stone from 1906 to 27, shaded dark blue, and the paler blue shaded Dolting repairs dating from 1897 to 1906 are already in place, as seen on the far right of the photograph. Simon Verity's Angel of 1984 I showed earlier replaced the Lost Angel in the lower centre of the photograph. Polychrome conservator Eddie Sinclair's extensive and thorough polychrome analysis and reconstruction of the image screen, carried out during the conservation programme of 1978 to 85, gives a real sense of the original beauty and splendour of the carved and painted screen. The south-facing statues and architectural detail have fared the worst over the centuries. I remember well carefully removing all the past cement repairs from statue 33 back in 1985 and how poor the condition of the stone was underneath, and revealing the shattered block having been glued together in the past with hard cement. Extensive mortar repair was required and has been in subsequent retreatments. Is it time for a new statue? A question we ask at every inspection. but it still remains in place. Antiquarian John Carter's drawing of the 1790s reveals what it once was. These two cross-legged 14th century figures deep in conversation are typical of the conservation issues we face, where and how much mortar to apply. The conservation treatment has been a success in terms of slowing down rates of decay. Regular inspections ensure any failures of mortar or the beginnings of new stone decay are addressed. The repair mortars are designed to be sacrificial, but the majority have lasted well from the 1970s and 1980s and later, whereas some of the repairs in the more exposed areas of the upper tier require retreatment and continue to do so. The long-term solution is regular maintenance. Netting provides essential protection from roosting birds. Conservation record drawings overlaid with information from several repair and inspection programs provide a very useful record to refer to during inspections and ongoing conservation treatment. Records from the current 2021 programme show that minimal repairs were necessary to many of the lower register statues and shelter coating was deemed unnecessary. Again, further record drawings from the recent 2021 conservation programme show the southern end of the screen, the upper tier, where repairs and shelter coating were necessary because of the eroded and weathered surfaces of these exposed statues. The mortar repairs and shelter coat formulations have largely stayed the same from the beginning of the programme way back in the 1970s and 1980s, based on mature lime putty, graded limestone dusts, mainly Portland limestone aggregate, and coloured with small amounts of Hornton brown or yellow brick dust or black oxide pigment. This slide shows the conservation treatment after 2008, when the statues have been mortar repaired and everything has been shelter coated, all the statues, all the architectural detail. And you can see on the images on the right hand side how eroded some of those statues are on the southern end, and they're the ones that really need retreatment with mortar and shelter coat. But for the current work in 2021, which has recently been completed, we've been more discerning in our use of shelter coat, only shelter coating the areas of stonework which need it, which is mainly the south facing statues and some of the upper tier statues. So rather than shelter coating everything, the architectural detail tends to be fairly sound, and most of the statues too are fairly sound now. So we've just been picking out the statues which are most in need of mortar repair and shelter coat treatment. This image shows the West Front and image screen as it is now in 2021 after the most recent repair and conservation treatment of the image screen, where just certain more exposed statues have been shelter coated and mortar repairs have been applied where necessary to the southern facing statues and some of the upper tier statues. And you can also see the condition of the blind arcade on the northern section of the West Front, where NHL2 repairs were carried out, and the NHL2 repairs and the stone are surviving very well. And the conservation work is very much a team approach, and at Exeter Cathedral We have Camilla Finley, the cathedral architect, John Allen, the cathedral archaeologist, Chris Sampson, clerk of works, Matt, Joe, and Christian, the masons and conservators, and myself. We all work together to discuss the policy and the techniques and the approach. Thanks very much for listening to my presentation about the conservation and repair of the west front and image screen of Exeter Cathedral. And if you'd like any more information about the approach, the techniques and the methods used, don't hesitate to contact me. Thank you.